So, hello, this is Matt. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Build, Grow, Scale. And what we do is we help people optimize their websites so that they make more sales from the same amount of traffic. But today on the Business Growth Architect show, we actually went a couple levels deeper and got into the mindset behind a lot of entrepreneurs. I've noticed that many of us create from a place of trying to heal a trauma or poor experience that we had in the past. And when we can build from a place of wholeness, the business actually does way better. And we go into all the nuances and a deep dive about that today on the podcast. And I really enjoy it.
Welcome to the Business Growth Architect Show. I am Beate Gillette. I am the host. I want to welcome you to our globally top 10% ranked podcast, where you will hear from industry experts about the strategies that are working right now to unlock hidden opportunities in any market so that you can grow your authority and scale your impact. And now let's get started with the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is your host, Beate Gillette, and this is another episode of the Business Growth Architect Show. Today with me is Matthew Stafford from Build, Grow, and Scale This Way. And we're going to talk about something really interesting today, and that is, are you addicted to learning? And should you be not doing that and instead do more and learn less? Matthew, I'm excited to have you on the show for a loaded topic.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here too. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So when we talk about something that you call a trauma response of business owners, what do you mean by that?
Oh, yeah, jumping right in. So I think,
right in.
yeah. This came from discovery of my own personal journey. And so the way my brain works is once I start figuring something out, I want to know what caused it to make sure that it wasn't just a one-off or I didn't get struck by lightning and it just worked that one time. And so as I went through my own healing journey from some trauma, growing up, I started talking to a lot of other entrepreneurs about it. And what I realized was that our community tends to have a lot of people who have trauma in their past. And so then I started trying to wrap my brain around what makes that the case here. And so essentially, trauma is a feeling of loss of control, and it's individually defined by each person. My trauma might not be trauma for you, or yours might not be for me. But when that happens, typically while we're young, we make a story about it. And a lot of times it can be, I'm not good enough, or I'm broken, or all the different iterations of that. And so what I found is a lot of the entrepreneurs, they're building these businesses in order to feel better internally. And that it doesn't work. You can build a really good, successful business. The term that I came up with is publicly successful, privately unfulfilled. So you can make a bunch of money and everybody thinks that you should be super happy. But internally, you never healed the wound. And so the business is literally almost makes it worse because now nobody thinks that you have a reason to complain, even though the business has nothing to do with why you hurt inside. And so through that process, I was like, man, why is it that it seems like we've congregated around business? Well, if you dealt with trauma when you were little, you came up with a story as a coping mechanism. And so that coping mechanism gives you the freedom to operate inside of a traumatic environment every day. And that's what business is. You're never actually in control in business. Things are always changing. That's what makes an entrepreneur an entrepreneur. You have to change and do things differently all the time. And so the normal people who have not dealt with that stuff are like, no way, I don't want anything to do with what you do every day. And so what I found is, one, we've the majority, the I would say 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, have something that they can look back to in their childhood that brought them to this place of thinking like, oh, I want to build this business to have freedom or to be able to make my own choices. And I think that's what they're looking for. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think it's a really important conversation to have, and one conversation that is not being had in the right way or exploited by internet marketers, if I'm really honest with you here. So I just got back from an ayahuasca journey not too long ago, and everything I was afraid of happened. And it was exactly what you were talking about. It is always going back to this thing. And literally, I mean, it was in a group of 80 people and everybody had the thing. It was just a different thing. But it was about abandonment, trust, worthiness, parents that were absent, parents that were trying to get out their children what they couldn't find within themselves, and then repeating a generational trauma pattern going forward. I find it absolutely fascinating that you are addressing a topic that that everybody kind of wants to talk about, but nobody does.
Yeah.
Why do you think is it that, so we entrepreneurs, small business owners, we're here to create freedom. Are we based on this idea that we have this trauma? Are we carrying more than we have to? Are we running away from it? Are we proving something? What is behind that? Is it the unhappy child that is looking for external validation? What have you found in your work?
Well, I think it's a combination of all of those. It would be, I don't think that a lot of people try to figure out the one size that fits all. And I think that, again, trauma is individually defined. I've been in a workshop where one lady, her family had went through the concentration camps. And then there was another guy there who, when he spoke of his trauma, spoke of it as just as serious. And literally his trauma was that his mom was always late to pick him up. So he thought she wasn't coming. So, but she always did. It didn't matter. It was that fear of that, oh, one day she's not going to. Don't really think there's one size fits all. I think the best way for all of us to figure it out is to actually talk about it. And it's really crazy that our brain thinks, oh, if I tell people the things about me that I think are bad, nobody will like me, or they'll leave me, or they will abandon me. And it couldn't be farther from the truth. The more honest and the more transparent and vulnerable that I've been with what I dealt with, the closer, deeper connections that I've developed, and really lifelong friendships through that process that, like, for a fact that those people are there no matter what. And so for some reason, our brain tells us the opposite of what's true. And so we go through this battle of like, oh, I have to just put my best foot forward, because if I do that, then you'll like me, or then you won't leave, or then you won't whatever. And the problem with that is, if I put my best foot forward and you put your best foot forward, then really all that we have is these two personas that are connected, but we don't feel any connection because it's not our authentic self. And so really, I don't think there's, I guess if there is a one size fits all, it's literally that you talk about it, that you address it. The moment you start talking about it, it gives you the ability to let go of it and move on. I literally am not run by my traumas anymore, but for the first 40 plus years of my life, I certainly was. And so I would say find a group of people that you feel safe with. One of the things I say is shame dies when stories are told in safe places. And so if you have a safe place that you can talk about whatever and be all of you, that shame dies, and it gives you the ability to actually build from a place of wholeness. And the business is so much better, and it grows so much better, makes more money, everything. When you're building from a place of scarcity or this to feel better, you can't help but build something that's, slightly broken.
What fascinates me about this is, I've said this a lot of times, Matthew, that this idea that if we were to able to retain existing information, repeated, regurgitated at the right time, that we'll get an A and we're rewarded, that we somehow take this message in the rest of our lives. But entrepreneurship, business ownership, innovation, creativity is the opposite of that. It is the unique differentiation factor, the unapologetic value proposition is everything that makes you. We know that in creativity, the greatest art comes from a lot of pain. Suffering does create phenomenal results because it puts you to a point of where there's a turning point, and with that turning point, you connect to a part of you where the mess becomes the message, as somebody, and I don't remember who said that, has once articulated it. So, for somebody who's listening to this and says, "This is a business growth architect show," what does this have anything to do with strategy? What would you tell them?
I would say that business is still built by people. And the majority of entrepreneurs that we help, because we have a community of hundreds of entrepreneurs, and then, thousands that we've helped over the last 10 years, the one common denominator is they're all built by people. And most businesses don't have business problems, they have people problems. And the moment that they realize that's the distinction and they can help their people, the people will perform at levels that they've never expected. I have a particular client right now that I've been coaching now for a year. We went through all the different phases of him dealing and healing with the different things, and he took his business and he more than 13x it. So he was doing 1 million a year, and he took it to 13 plus. And then, already he's on pace for probably a little over 40 this year. So like the issue is not a business problem hardly ever. It's typically the business owner is the bottleneck, but they're also the personality of the business. So that's where the majority of work or the majority of exponential growth can be found. When why do these high powered CEOs get coaching? Because when they get it, the entire business does better. So it means the bottleneck wasn't in the business, it was in the person leading it.
How much do you think energy flow plays into this? And just making sure that the beehive understands that this conversation is maybe not your typical entrepreneur growth conversation, but maybe it is exactly the typical entrepreneur growth conversation we need to be having. The energy that flows from me, right? So I set out with a set of belief systems. How much is my energy or what I do prohibiting an energy flow, a monetary or an idea or an innovation energy flow? And do I even have this much power?
Yeah, so I think a lot, and without getting too woo woo, I can just use an example that like everyone gets. I guarantee you that you've been sitting in a room of people before, and someone walks in, and they're angry or they're not in a good mood, and it literally feels like it sucked the energy out of the room. All of a sudden, people are quieter, they're not talking as much, they're kind of pins and needles. And then you have the other dude that comes in, hey, everybody smiles, and literally the energy in the whole room goes up. So that can't not happen because we have what's called mirror neurons. And so if you're in a good mood or if you're in a whole place, when you deal with your team and your staff, they're going to feel better. If they feel better, they'll do better. They'll want to please you. Like there's a whole bunch of different reasons why that happens. And people go, oh yeah, well, I don't let my problem, I don't tell the team about the problems. I keep that to myself. I'm like, okay, well, does the dog know if you're in a bad mood when you come home, if you don't say anything? And they're like, yeah. And I said, do you think another human can't know that? It's pretty easy for you to know. I think they say 6% of your words is the language, and the other percentage, I think it's like 11% more is your body language. And then people tend to fill in the rest with their past experiences. So they're not really good listeners. They get about 6% of your words, about 11% of your body language. The other part that matters a lot is your tone. So, yeah, I think that who you are and who you are being every single day matters a lot as to what your team gets done. And I've witnessed it with this gentleman, because now I'm coaching 4 of his team, or him and 3 of his team, so 4 total in their company. And yeah, the things that they say about him, how he showed up during that year, were great and had a lot to do with why they're doing what they're doing.
That's amazing. And we will be right back after this quick message. Are you looking for the hidden opportunities for you in this market? Or are you simply wanting to figure out what is your unique differentiation factor that makes clients want to work with you and not your competitors? If this resonates, I want to invite you to go to uncoverysession.com and schedule your 15-minute complimentary uncovery session with one of our business growth advisors that will take you through what your number one business growth blocker is, what you can do to remove it, and what your very best next step should be. And now let's get back to the show. And welcome back. Beate here with Matthew, talking about how energy, trauma, and who you are as a leader really affects your business. I want to talk now a little bit, Matthew, about the decision making in the business. The internet marketing world is telling me I need to learn how to speak from stage. I need to learn how to do a funnel. I need to learn how to convert. I need to learn how to get leads. I need to learn how to write. I need to write a book. I need to publish it. It needs to be a bestseller, of course. I need to have an online program. I need to have a membership program. I need to have an event. Everybody tells me more and more and more and more and more. How does this affect everything?
Well, every one of those people that's telling you that you need that is probably someone that's selling that. And so my advice is, obviously I have to get a bunch of people off the fence in order to be successful, is less learning, more doing. So you don't have to be an expert at all four forms of traffic before you can be an expert at one. You can be an expert at one and then start adding the other ones once you're profitable, or you can hire someone to do it. But what I find is people are so busy they're so busy. Well, I'll actually go one level deeper. What I think is actually happening is, if I have a dream to build this e-commerce business and I'm learning, I'm still growing and moving towards this dream of having an e-commerce business. If I stop learning and start doing and it doesn't work, then I'm a failure. And then everything inside that I believe, that my inner limiting beliefs, it's all true. See, they were right. And so they're so afraid of them trying something and it not working that they literally get in this perpetual phase of always learning, thinking like, oh, well, I'm actually doing work towards building my dream, when really all they're doing is just prolonging, how soon they can have it. Because you'll never be an expert at all of those things like you brought up, but they say you need them all. It's just not true. I just spent 3 days in Las Vegas with a gentleman that runs a business with one assistant, and he makes about $3 million a year, like literally. And it's an information business. Very, very, very simple. 3 hours a week, 3 days a month, and generates about 300 grand a month. It's just crazy. And he doesn't buy into more equals more, doing more things equals more. So I don't really believe that. And the other cool thing is, now with AI, we're watching people be able to downsize their teams, or even just take the people that are on their team and make them a lot more productive and a lot more effective, so that they don't have to actually hire more people. So not necessarily even downsize, but just get a lot more work done with the same number of people. I don't subscribe to more is better. I subscribe to being very focused and doing the next most important thing. Most of the time, we think we have these 8 things to do. And so instead of doing the next most important thing, we do a little bit here and a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. And in the end, that doesn't actually move us forward. And I'm guilty of it too. Like, I do the exact same thing. I'm calling myself out just at the same time I'm sharing it.
So, for someone who has now a shelf full of shelf help, and I've spent, what's the number? I think a conservative number would be like, what, $150,000 in programs, masterminds, subscriptions, and things like that. How do we help them? How do you help them now to free themselves from the burden of, but I paid for it. I bought it. I must use it. Otherwise, I made a mistake. And then I proved myself wrong again because now we are back in that perpetual mindset of, oh, made a mistake. Am a failure. Knew it. Need to do more.
Yep. I will say this, and this phrase has helped me more than anything. Whatever happened couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't. And the moment you believe that, you stop investing energy looking backwards on regret, and you literally have a lot more energy and presence to work on what's in front of you. And I was in a mastermind with Peter Crone, and he's the one that told me it. And it's a phenomenal phrase. Like it just, when I do it in my journal every single day, I write that. And so it just reminds me, listen, whatever happened, couldn't happen any other way because it didn't. And now I'm done spending time on that. I can only work going forward. And that has allowed me to say no to projects that maybe I had said yes to at one time and were fragmenting my attention, to say no to, and no doesn't mean no forever. No might, you can, another way that I get my brain to accept it is it's no for now. If I just go, oh, it's no for now, that allows me to move it off and I can come back to it another time. If I really need to come back to it another time, it'll show up again. Otherwise, it was probably a waste of my time anyways. So yeah, I just don't look backwards anymore other than to get the lesson and create more awareness and then go forward. But certainly no regret. We all make mistakes every day. If we're going to beat ourselves up for that, then it's just it's a no-win game.
So I love that. So I want to just take a step back and talk and sort of recap what we talked about, because the conversation today is about mindset and about understanding that what's happening is happening for you for a lot of reasons. So if you take a step back and you recall, or you do the self-development work, really, of looking at where your pattern comes from. I was just in Germany, Matthew. It was really interesting. And I left Germany 30 years ago for good reasons. And not quite 30, 25. And I went back, and it was so interesting to me that when I saw my mother, it's exact same pattern of thinking, behaving, doing, acting, I mean, it's the exact same thing. And when we talk, I can hear that her attachment to what she has experienced is this one story that only makes sense to her in this particular context. So now we have a business owner. They've gone through COVID, they've done the whiplash, they did this, then it needed to be that, then it needed to be that. Now we're yet somewhere else. How do we help them now to figure out, is there a story running that they need to get rid of? And what is the fastest way, the best strategy now to, shed the weight?
Yeah, I liked how you described it, and it is true. So our brain, again, I did a 3-day workshop. I'm learning this process for helping people with this. Essentially, like the difference between the conscious and the unconscious is the conscious goes offline all the time. The unconscious never goes offline. And that's where all your stories are held, is in the unconscious. So when you're not, it's not logical. Like nobody gets out of bed, jumps up, lands on their feet and goes, I'm going to do everything I can to have a shitty day today. They just don't do that, right? They don't consciously choose that. So how can they consciously choose the opposite? They can't. They can try, but all the stories are at the subconscious level. So it really needs to be done at the subconscious level. And the problem is their brain has categorized, and all of our brains do, is this memory is like an open file. And so we continue to treat it like it's still happening. But the truth of the matter is, what we have to do is our brain has to recategorize that file and close it. That's a memory of an event that happened in the past that's no longer happening. There's no action needed. And so through that process of closing that file, then it just becomes a fact of life rather than this thing that's constantly triggering you and making decisions in the background.
I was in an event with David Nagel, who is a big mindset trainer, and I had this vision of me trying to sail with an anchor, and which is obviously not very practical. And then I became, being German, a specialist on anchors, and I became a diver. So I could go down to the anchor, and there was a coral, so I became a coral specialist on top of being an expert diver. And then one day somebody gives me a knife.
Yeah.
And you go, but now that I let this story go, it changes everything. Then everything that I believed in is no longer true. How much does the attachment to that story that, entrepreneurs, business owners are telling themselves really play a part in them not wanting to make the change, being afraid of making the change? Because what if that story now changes and it's no longer true?
Right. Well, hopefully it was never true anyways. It was never true. It was made up from a 5-year-old that had a very small scope of life and no logic brain to form the memory. And so, yeah, there's very, very little of it that's true. And then there's a new study out. Like forever, we believed that essentially every memory is stored back there. Well, it's not true. They have now there's over 100 white papers out. Essentially, when you recall a memory, you actually use protein from your body and rebuild the memory based off of what you think happened, and then it's put away again. So every time that you bring a memory out, you're actually rebuilding a portion of it, and it's not the same. And so, yeah, I will tell you, the people who get over it very quickly and I see huge results very fast are the ones who are not attached to being a victim. The people who blame the event, blame everything else about it as to that being the cause, those people are in love with the story that it's not my fault. I can't do anything about it. The people that go, nope, that's an event. It happened in my life. I gave it way too much importance for a long time. Now I realize it's no longer true, or it's not happening anymore, and they can move forward. So very quickly, the people who are victims will find a new thing to latch onto. The people who are not victims, who take 100% responsibility for, yes, it happened. It's a part of my life. I learned from it, and now I'm going forward. I don't have to use that as my reason for not doing well anymore. And so there is two distinct people that I've found as I've worked through, this with a lot of different people.
I find this is so true. In this ayahuasca journey, I uncovered much more trauma than I remembered, and I was really upset about that at first because I never liked the idea that I was a victim, nor because it doesn't go with my narrative, but because I didn't admit that I was victimized as a child. I still carried this because I was denying something that actually happened. So I think that the distinction that you made is, and I see this in sort of the follow-up group as a big discussion where people say, well, that's the victim mindset. I said, but I was a victim. But I was a victim as a child. I was victimized as a child. But that story no longer has relevance over how I move forward today. But it's part of my story. So I I think this is probably one of the most important things I've learned, Matthew, and please add something to it if you feel it's needed. But the reality of what happened is what happened, and in many cases, the trauma is real. It's just the story is not real.
Yeah, the event happened, but the event's no longer happening. And so we have a choice to close that file and have that be a memory of an event that happened in the past that's no longer happening anymore. And the moment we can do that, we can move beyond it. And we're not dragging that with us. Like you said, we're not taking that anchor that has that story slowing us down. If anything, it could become fuel. I can show people that that trauma doesn't have to hold you back. It can be healed and move forward, and your life can be, infinitely better, not living it over and over and over again when it's not actually happening anymore.
How quickly do you see changes when this work is being done?
Oh boy. Like I think I see them like literally within an hour or two. And it doesn't have to take a long time. The old way of talking about it and doing talk therapy where it takes years, and what are you doing? Like every time you tell that story, you're relaying down or you're reinforcing that neural track of this happened to me and this affects me and all these things. Yes, it does. But the more you talk about it, the deeper entrenched that becomes, the harder it is to let go of it. We understand so much more about the brain nowadays. There is ways to, well, again, how fast did it take you to make that memory? Typically, it's like instant, right? So if your brain is able to restore that trauma in an instant, it should also be able to release it in an instant. And I really, really do believe that that's true. I've watched it a lot of times, enough to realize that it's not just an anomaly. And the other thing that I would say is, like, everybody talks about it as like it's this thing, like I'm in the dark, I don't really know what's going on. And I always tell people you have to feel your way out of the dark. If you're in a dark room, you don't figure it out. You don't take off running towards this wall that you don't know where it's at and hope the door's open. You feel your way out. And that's exactly what you do through this. Many times we've shut that part of ourselves down, or we're afraid of it, so we don't feel it. And when we feel it, then we let go of it. And so it can happen very fast, just like it was recorded very fast. It can also be let go very fast.
I find that very, very comforting. And in your work now with the business owners, the entrepreneurs that you help, tell us a little bit about that. Like, what do you do, and how does that process work?
Yeah, so the majority of what I do is actually helping people's websites convert better. I love the way the brain works. I looked at how we can help people enjoy the journey on a website. That's basically your conversation with your client is your website. And so if it's not very good at communicating your message, you're not going to make very many sales. And so what's funny is we'll help them do that. They'll start making more money. They'll find a way emotionally to start sabotaging it or struggling. We help them with that. And then all of a sudden it does better again. Then we rework the site. So it's actually, again, it's come from me having to go through the journey myself, then recognizing it in other entrepreneurs, helping them through that. And then we've been able to now just stair step that up. But typically it's a combination of both.
I don't hear the word conscious websiting very often, so I'm I'm relieved that
Yeah.
that there is such a thing. Matthew, I could talk to you about this for a long time. I think this was a very important conversation. So thank you for allowing me to have that conversation with you, because trauma, I believe, does play a big part in entrepreneurial success. And the minute we let that go, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing part of your journey too. So that was very nice.
Oh man, I mean, I was in this journey, a heap of trauma somewhere on the grass with my blanket, I was so mad at myself. Couldn't believe that I spent money to feel this shitty.
Yeah, but again, you got to feel your way out of the dark. So actually feeling it a lot of times is a way to release it.
I believe that this comes at the exact right time for us to share this message with the Beehive. So thank you again for being here. It's what a pleasure. So how can we have people come to you? Where do we send them?
My email is matt@buildgrowscale.com. You can do that, or you can go to our website, buildgrowscale.com, and see what we do. There's lots of free resources. Obviously, we have lead magnets and things. We have a challenge that you can go through. I think the first one's like $1 and it's worth thousands of dollars. And so we give people several opportunities to get to know, like, and trust us before you really have to spend too much money.
I love that. Thank you very much. Again, this is it for us today. Thank you all for listening and watching. And I encourage you to really, really take a look into some of the stories that are in your head that are going on, and check out Matt, please. And until we talk again next time, and goodbye. Thank you for listening to or watching the show. We are so excited that you're here, and we are very grateful for you. Now it's our turn to ask you for help. Please do share this episode with one other person that needs to hear what we were talking about today. If there's any question you have about business, please do reach out to us and let us know. And don't forget to schedule your complimentary uncovery session at uncoverysession.com, where one of our business growth advisors will help you to figure out what your number one business growth blocker is in only 15 minutes. And that's it for us today. Until next time.